All right, we're going to kick off today. I am Michele Cobb. I'm the publisher of AudioFile Magazine, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our Mysterious Voices conversation. AudioFile is the #1 source for audiobook reviews in the world, and we are happy to have so many people here today. You will notice that towards the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A box. If you would like to ask a question of our fabulously talented narrators, please put it in the Q&A box and not the chat so that we do see it and can get to your question later. All right. I will also say one thing, don't leave early because at the end we'll be doing a little bit of a giveaway. So if you would like to have a chance to win a free audiobook, do stay till the bitter end. Now, I'm sure you're not here to see me, so I am going to take a moment and introduce our fantastic guests. We start off with Imogen Church. She's an award-winning screenwriter and actress. She's a published academic and, I love this, ex-burlesque performer. She's narrated roughly 300 audiobooks and is often referred to by audiophile reviewers as having lively and enthusiastic narration. And we love that she transports us when we listen. Of her narration, One by One by Ruth Ware, which we'll hear a little bit of it later today, our reviewer says, Church's extraordinary narration of this newest suspense novel will keep listeners glued to their earbuds, unable to do anything else but listen, wide-eyed and rapt. Church delivers a myriad of individual voices, offers telling characterizations, and transports listeners into every scene with perfect pacing of the humor, conflicts, and terror. So we'll look forward to hearing a little bit of that later. Next up, we have Atlanta native and award-winning singer-actress, Nie Fleming. Oh, nope, I got it wrong. Nie Fleming. There we go. I'm practicing my French. She's been performing since she was 5 years old, and she draws from her extensive travel and training at the Tony Award-winning Alliance Theater and New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. She possesses an impressive catalog of dialects and characterizations that bring a uniquely rich vitality to her work. And she is a new and exciting voice in the world of audiobooks, so we are glad to welcome her to the AudioFile family with her first Earphones Award as part of the ensemble cast of M.K. Jemison's How Long Till the Black Future Month. And from the review of And Now She's Gone, which again we'll hear some of later, Fleming highlights Gray's frustrations at making rookie mistakes, her growing suspicion of foul play, and her conflicted feelings for her male boss. Fleming varies her inflections and vocal tone to distinguish each character, punctuating the dialogue to reflect their mood and temperament. All right, next up, Mr. J.D. Jackson. He gets consistently strong reviews and is known for his range, artistry, and ability to capture the tone of any book. And he's an actor, an audiobook narrator, and an acting instructor. And he's won Earphones Awards. He's been nominated for multiple Audio Awards, and he was recently introduced into AudioFile's Golden Voices for his body of work in the craft. One reviewer recently said of his narration of The Outsider by Richard Wright, Jackson's voice is so versatile, nuanced, and agile that he can shift characters and tone without missing a beat. His delivery is well paced, and alive. All right, we'll look forward to hearing a little bit of the Dewey Decimal System by Nathan Larsen later. And finally, we have Kate Redding, who has recorded hundreds of audiobooks across many genres over a 30-year-plus career. She's won Audio Awards for The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter, mystery, Breasts, nonfiction, Bellwether, fiction, and The Words of Radiance, fantasy book, co-narrated with her husband, Michael Kramer. Our reviewers enjoy her warm voice and her accent work. And here's a quote from our review of Midnight Train to Prague. Reading is a caring, sensitive guide, creating convincing relationships and revealing long-buried secrets. She creates real people among the abundance of characters, using utterly believable accents while smoothly navigating characters' vivid, often painful memories. So much amazing audiobook works from these four. I know that you're looking forward to hearing them speak, so I'll leave you with this. Just a reminder that we are recording this, and the recording of today's event will be available on our YouTube channel by early next week, hopefully sooner. So let's say hello to our talented lineup. Welcome, everyone. All right, we're going to kick off with Imogen. She's reading from Ruth Ware's One by One, based on Agatha Christie's And Then They Were None. And this book is told from two different first-person perspectives. So here we have the character of Liz, who lives inside her head a lot. And just a reminder, if you do want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A box, not the chat box, so we can be sure to see it. All right, take it away, Imogen.
Here we go. We are quite high in the mountains now. The minibus makes its way up through little alpine villages that would look like picture postcards, except the sky is a threatening slate colour. The slushy rain down in the valley has turned into huge white flakes, and the driver has the windscreen wipers on full, swishing them aside as fast as they fall. I look down at my phone, flicking through the apps to try to distract myself before coming back to Snoop. After I left the company, I deleted the app. I wanted everything about Snoop behind me, and I didn't like the idea of Topher, Ava, and the others keeping tabs on me through the software. But a few weeks later, I found myself downloading it again. There is a reason it has just tipped 100 million users. It's addictive. But this time, my profile is locked down as tight as it will go, and there is a junk email address attached to the account. It's not that I'm paranoid. I don't imagine they sit there searching the user records for Liz Owens every few days. I'm just quite a private person. That's normal, isn't it?
Thank you so much. So much more out of that book. And I've got a question for you about it now.
Okay, go.
So this is told from first person with the multiple points of view. So how does that influence the narration choices that you make?
I think you've got to be really careful about choosing accents and intonations that will make them really clear. If I'm flipping each chapter between character A and character B, even if their backgrounds are quite similar, which theirs aren't, so that's fine, but in a book where their backgrounds are quite similar, I'm still going to have to find some really clear way to delineate each character, even if that means giving them, I don't know, some nasality or a really, kind of deep resonant voice. But there's got to be some way to keep them really separate and really clear. Otherwise, people are just going to get confused.
That makes sense. So let me ask JD, how does your narration change when you're reading first versus third person?
Well, it's perspective, it's the bird's eye view, and third person. So you're basically God. You see all, you hear all, you think all, and so there's a bit of a detachment from it. First person, it's immediacy. You're in the middle of the moment. You're experiencing it as it happens, and it's a lot more exciting because you feel more thespian-like in first person. So I love, first person. Yeah. So yeah.
All right, Kate, I've got a more left field question for you. You've been in the industry for a while. You've seen things change in terms of technology, especially in the last decade. So I'm curious, how do you think the changes in technology have altered the recording process? And do you think that it's actually improved it?
Unmuting. I would say one of the hugest differences is the stress level. Because in the old days, if you lost a recording that was on tape, you lost it. There was no backup. And now that we're using computer software, you can set, even if you have a power out and you lose a session, a track, you can go back into the computer, find all of those clips and stitch them back together. It's not a catastrophe. But when we used to work on ADAT, that's a VHS tape formatted for 8 tracks. If you were in the middle of your 8th track and the machine ate your tape and you couldn't save it, you lost 8 hours of work. So this is just like, oh, I don't have to worry about a thing.
Well, that's a very interesting perspective. Now let's ask our newest narrator to the group, Janie. Tell me, we do have a question from the audience. They want to know, what is your favorite genre that you read?
Actually, I love children's books. Ironically, because they're just so much fun. You get, kids have big imaginations, and usually you get to pick from different voices and really just pull from your imagination and try and make things interesting and exciting. And yeah, I just love children's books mainly. That's my favorite.
Oh, so I have a really good question from the audience now. This is, we'll take everyone in turn. So we'll start with you.
Okay.
Have you ever narrated a title that is so unnerving and scary that it freaked you out?
No, I've narrated some that freaked me out, but not because they were scary. But yeah, pass. We'll have to get another person. Go to someone else.
All right. Imogen, what about you? Have you ever been freaked out by an audio recording?
God, yes. Last year's Ruth Ware, The Turn of the Key. I mean, I can't swear on here, but I would swear if I could, because I was that scared. And I find that I get so entrenched in a recording, like JD said, specifically if it's first person, that on the odd occasion the producer comes in my headphones. I mean, I literally jumped out of my chair. I was reading and talking about the creaking in the floor, and then the producer said something. I went, oh my God. It was so scary. And I've had loads of lovely emails from people telling me how scared I made them, which made me very proud. So yeah, The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware.
Excellent, and a good recommendation.
Yeah.
JD, what about you? You ever been freaked out in the booth?
Never. Well, freaked out maybe, but not scared or terrified. I've had some freaked out moments, but not because of that, the horror genre or, anything that frightened me. I think as a child, I could sit and watch Cujo and I'm good, and go out and play with dogs. I'm fine. That stuff it just never really bothered me that way. So yeah.
So next time I see a zombie movie, I should come to you to feel better
Sure.
about it.
Hey.
Yeah. What about you, Kate? Ever freaked out?
Yeah, definitely. Multiple times. I cannot watch horror movies. And that's a broad spectrum, like something you might consider just ordinary fiction. I would be like, no, that's a horror movie. I think for me, the thing that freaks me out the most is when I'm deep in a book and the person that I'm voicing does really horrible things and I become that person. That freaks me out.
Interesting. So, see, this is the life of an actor that the rest of us don't have to deal with. All right, we're going to turn to our next reading. Next up, we have Janie. She's reading from Rachel Housel's Halls, And Now She's Gone. And this is a great example of how important it is for narrators to be able to handle dialogue and create distinct voices or distinct characters with your voice. All right, the floor is yours.
Clarissa asked, was he cheating? Not sure yet, but I suspect so. I told the girlfriend's pal to meet me here tonight. Gray's eyes skipped around the cantina, looking for anyone resembling Taya. There was a guy with bad facial hair studying the menu as though it were the Torah. There were 4 Golden Girl types nursing glasses of white wine. Other customers watched the Dodgers game on the television over at the bar. You told him to come here? Sadie asked. That, Jennifer raised a finger, is a big no-no. Don't ever mix business with pleasure. This place is your safe space where you can be all that you can be. Because what if this Taya likes it and comes back and you can't chill her anymore? So, bad girl. She tapped Gray's hand. Bad. You're right, Gray said. Stupid idea. Too late now. Anyway, Jennifer said, your client hit her and then she left. He hit her, Zadie said, cheated on her, hit her again, and then she left. Dude killed her, Clarissa said. They always do, you know.
Very nice. It actually makes me want to go to a bar or a restaurant.
Right.
So this is a scene with a lot of lively dialogue. How do you balance the pacing and the character voices in a busy scene like this? And then a follow-on question is, do you usually move around that much when you record?
Okay, so yeah, that's a big deal. The moving around is something I'm I can't help but doing. It helps with the characters and the characterization sometimes, because I'm actually hearing the conversation in my head. So I'm thinking, who is Clarissa? And once I see her in my mind, I'm able to kind of find whatever tick, or there is usually something that I connect with each character. So if it's a tick or a look or a glance or a shoulder, it's something, and it's in me, and it'll help me find the character really quickly and then just go back. But the narrator is usually, I think of that as like the omnipresent sort of like God character. And so that helps me get really neutral. And when I need to wipe the slate clean, I think about just getting really neutral for the narrator's sections. And then the characters, I try and keep a notebook by me, usually where I've mapped out which characters are from the South, the North, who's British, who's, you know, and that way I have some way to refer to it while I'm reading. Yeah, I hope that's clear.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
When you're recording in front of the microphone, is it an issue for when you move around like that?
Sometimes, yeah, it depends on the studio, and it depends on how quiet things are. But I try and wear really soft clothing, like something that doesn't kind of rub against the mic or rub against my headset, so that, yeah, because I get very physical. It does help. It does help.
Great. All right, Imogen, how do you approach scenes with lots of different characters?
Oh, I am of the Nie school. I am so big. I've got all these, I'm gurning, I'm making these horrible faces. I have to be really careful not to wear really like crisp cotton, because then it's making a load of, take out the big dangly earrings, some of my necklaces. I'm exactly the same, and it's not uncommon to have a producer pop in and say, oh, do you think you could, I don't know, maybe dial it down a bit.
That's hilarious. We've got so many great questions coming in from the audience. So JD, do you keep notes on each character so you can recreate them if a client has, you know, a series in which you see the same characters again and again, and what kind of notes do you make?
Well, usually when I'm self-recording, or if I have, you know, an engineer that is cool, they'll have the, you know, the character track below. So when I initially visualize the character, I try to think of someone I know or I've come across, so that I can actually see their face in my head, you know, watch them move, you know, how they move. And once I can visualize them in my head, then I really don't need to refer back to notes. I just remember the person or the face, or, you know. And then if it's a long series, you know, there's the cheat, there's the little character tracks. So you go back to that particular session, and if you were, you know, Dewey in this one, then you go back and you find Dewey and you plug it in. That's the technology thing, right? So you plug in Dewey and you can listen to Dewey again, so, you know, so that you're, you know, reasonably on par with what you've done before, and that's it. Yeah, there's the magic of technology. Yeah.
Well, this is an easy one, so I'll just ask everyone by show of hands. Does anyone stand when they record? Doesn't look like it. Sometimes.
Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. Yeah.
With children's books, I will stand if they're short,
Makes
because
sense.
it keeps it energetic, and it makes it. I think you can hear that. You can hear when it's when it needs to be stayed and you need to be relaxed and sitting, and versus when it needs to be really energetic and kind of excitable. I tend to stand for those, but yeah.
Kate, here's a question for you. So, you know, you're making all these choices about what you're going to do. And do you ever work with an author to take their views into consideration?
So normally publishing companies erect a kind of firewall between you and the author. The process needs to be sort of streamlined. They don't really want you huddling with the author unless you are specifically invited to. Michael and I are now working with a lot of independent authors who just hire us directly to record their books. And that, I find, there's more of a conversation. But they're the master of the print, and they're trusting us to render it in audio. So sometimes the language doesn't exist for them to express something, but we can say, well, let me show you, and give them a sample, and they'll be like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking, but they couldn't have found the words to describe it. And that's just one of the interesting differences between print and audio. So
that makes sense. You are bringing your expertise to it. What about any of the rest of you? Imogen?
Yeah, I have a. So I'm normally cheeky and circumnavigate the firewall, because as a writer myself, I just think the one thing I would hate more than anything would be if there was one particular character that was really important to that writer, and I plumped for something and it was totally wrong. So normally, if I can get in touch with them, I'll say, look, I don't need tons of notes from you, but if there's one character that you really love or it's really important to you, tell me and I will do my best to give you that. And it works really well, except for this one time. I was doing this kind of sci-fi fantasy novel by Chris Beckett, who is amazing. His writing is insanely good. And the whole book, it was the third in the Dark Eden trilogy. So it's set on a dark planet generations after this planet was colonized by two people who crash landed there. And so I got in touch with him and was like, oh, I don't know, man, what's the accent? Like, who are these people? Two people colonized this planet like 10 generations ago. And he said, well, you know, one of them was from Brooklyn and one of them was from Brixton. So kind of a mix of that. At which point I went, why? So I invented an entire accent and read the whole book, first person, in Brixton.
Wow.
It was work. Luckily, the author got in touch, and it's the most personal of all of his books. And he got in touch and said, I loved it, but holy cow, I probably could have gone without that.
Well, live and learn there. All right, we're going to turn things over to JD. He's going to read from The Dewey Decimal System by Nathan Larsen. And as you listen to this, I've asked the audience to think about the unusual characters that narrators have to create. Take it away, JD.
All right. Hold it. I freeze mid-step and am brought smack back to my surroundings. I direct the light left to right and up and down the stairwell. Where are my pistachio shells? Say, whenever word spreads, and it spreads fast, that I'm on a job, All squatters know to avoid this place, as if whatever nefarious shit I'm up to creates a field of bad energy that repels them. It's weird, but it's true. I don't mind. I'd much rather be alone at any given time, though I tolerate them when they're around. It's a public building. It's my public building. So whenever I start a job, I know I need to be extra careful. And in case you haven't caught on to this yet, I have a system. The system is made up of maps, rituals, and patterns that I like to repeat in certain circumstances. Also tokens, which I guess you might say in my case is the physical bottle, pill bottle, the key, of course, and the bottle of Purell, plus my hat. Rituals are classified as safety, hygienic, and other, or miscellaneous if you prefer, but other is a less ungainly word, I reckon. One of the safety rituals is the scattering of the shells. I collect them in my shell bowl and cast them about as I leave the library without fail, always and only on the third set of steps. And I clean them up nightly with my trusty dustbuster. Should I notice some crushed shells upon my return home, I might expect to find visitors upstairs and be prepared accordingly. In this case, I'm not seeing any shells yet, anywhere, broken or otherwise. I play the flashlight up and down. Correction, since the lights are off in the whole building, I'm going more by sound than sight, and I have not heard the familiar homecoming sound of crunching underfoot. Now I'm visually confirming it. No shells at all are present here, halfway up the third set of steps. I kill the flashlight, and darkness, complete and total, hustles in to surround me.
Well, that does sound like an unusual character. How do you make these
Yeah.
unusual characters believable and relatable to the listener?
Honesty. I mean, it's acting, technique, training. It's like if you're playing the Joker, you don't say, "I'm the most evil character who's ever walked the face of the earth." You have motivation, you have given circumstances, you have your objectives that you want to, accomplish in whatever scene you're in the middle of, and you can legitimize why you want what you want. So if you're in, especially in first person, if your character finds nothing weird at all about himself, as most people do, don't. So you're honest to the character, and in first person, once you know who that character is, then nothing he sees. For example, if he walks out his door and he's used to seeing purple trees and strawberry colored whatever. If he's used to seeing something odd and outrageous on a regular basis, then as he observes these things, it's just like seeing a regular tree. It's just like seeing, a regular car. But now if this person is not used to normal trees, green trees with leaves, then he's going to take that in, slower. He's going to process that, and then he's going to go about his business. So it's about being honest to the character. And if you're honest to the character, then it's easy to play weird, normal, or whatever your definition of those things might be.
Fascinating. All right, Kate, what's a role you've enjoyed getting into, especially one of these oddball roles, if you can think of?
So Michael and I do a lot of epic fantasy. And one of my favorite characters that I've ever voiced is a creature called a Murdral. And I'm sitting there going, okay, so we've basically got gods and goddesses and kings and queens and magical, outrageous creatures that are not human, but they speak in human language. How am I going to distinguish this voice? How can I make this voice like completely other? And so I figured out, I don't know if I can do it on the spot, but I figured out that if I did it on the inhale,
Wow, that sounds difficult to sustain, I would think.
They didn't speak very much.
Good choice. All right, Imogen, we've got a couple of, sort of basic recording questions. How many hours a day do you record, and what time frame is that? Are you morning, afternoon?
I have a small kid, so I record during school hours. So, but my best hours are early. I am a morning person. I will record as much as I can before lunch, because everything after lunch just goes slowly downhill.
And what time do you start? Are you like a 4 a.m, or after the kids
Not
go to
that
school?
early. Not that early. You crazy? No, probably about 7:30. About 7:30.
Excellent. Janie, have you ever memorized passages to allow yourself the freedom to look away?
Yes, I actually did a podcast not too long ago, and I was asked to learn a Japanese phrase phonetically. So I had to learn it, because when I got to that moment, I wouldn't have time to do the adjustments, and sort of in the moment, I just would need to say it. So I memorized it, and I just all day long, I just said it over and over and over again. And I think I can still remember it. I don't want to completely mess it up now, now if I do it, but I was supposed to be like a Siri version, like a computer voice. And let's see, I would say, Konnichiwa, watashi wa Abi desu. Watashi ga anata no sochi o sukido suritsu ga arima. I don't think I did that right. Either way, it's something like that. But I had to kind of learn it phonetically, because I don't speak Japanese. So yeah.
So do you actually know what it means, or you just learned it phonetically?
Yeah, no, I learned what it meant. It meant, hello, my name is Abby. I will be your system analyzer today. I'm completely messing this up. But yes, I learned what it meant at the time. I knew what it meant at the time. Yes.
So, Kate, you often record with your husband, and you even when you're recording alone, you're doing these multiple person conversations. Do you ever have to go back and redo one of the voices, or you're just constantly changing on the fly?
So a lot depends on the writer. Sometimes it's easy to get lost if the writer doesn't indicate on the page as you're switching between characters. If you got 5 characters in a room and it's just dialogue, 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 that can be hard unless the writer plants the right kind of clue to let you know who's speaking. But in terms of the switching, there are different kinds of theater that I've done, and some theater just requires no transition. There's no wind up. You just flip. You just turn the corner immediately. There's no rounding the curve. And so when you're doing multiple characters speaking to each other, that's what you do. You just go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And there's no preparation. It's just immediate. And I love that. It's very energized, because the characters are topping each other. They're building on each other, and they're going somewhere. And you're the vessel. So you just go, I'm him, I'm her, I'm him, I'm the dog, I'm him.
Now, do you all have theater training? Yeah. I'll have to say, my favorite narrators all have a theater background. Janie, you had something to add.
No, I was going to add on, just piggyback on that. Basically, when you hear conversations or you overhear conversations, even when you're telling a story to a friend and you're trying to replay the roles of conversations that you've heard, you will automatically do it. I think people automatically do it. They go, and she said this, but then he said this, and then she said that. And so we naturally do it anyway. And I think that sort of helps when you're reading. You can hear the conversation in your head and kind of convey that, I think, sometimes. I don't know if
Excellent.
that was helpful.
Well, JD, I've got another nuts and bolts question for you. How many times do you read a book before you perform it?
One. Once. I don't have time. I mean, honestly, it's, especially when you start you know, going from book to book to book to book, you kind of you read as much as you can each night, you know. But yeah, there's no way I could read a book twice before I record it now. So one, that's it. Yeah.
Excellent. Good to know. All right. We're going to turn things over to Kate, and then we have so many questions coming in from the audience quickly that we will return to that. But Kate is, for our final reading, going to regale us with a short bit from Death and the Maiden, which is set in 1191 England.
A combination of the early start and the boat's rhythm had a soporific effect, and before long, despite the cold, Ali was curled up on the bench beside Penda, fast asleep. "She up to it then, do you think?" Penda asked Ulf, when she was sure Ali couldn't overhear. "Aye," Ulf nodded. "She'll do right enough. Got her mother's blood in her veins, that one. Same instinct for healing. Always did, even as a baby." Penda looked down at the recumbent Ali, took off her mantle, and draped it over her. "And Gelf?" she asked, tucking her pelt neatly around her. "Still with us, I trust. I ain't dragged this poor girl all the way here for nothing, then?" "No." Ulf rested the oars for a moment and crossed himself. "No, you ain't. Still here, thank God, but..." He shook his head. "I tell you, Pen, these is strange times right enough. And Giltha or no Giltha, it makes me worry if we've done the right thing bringing her here." Penda looked up. Something in his tone disturbed her, and when he was reluctant to elaborate, she left her place beside Ali and climbed onto the bench beside him. "What?" she asked, searching his face. "What do you mean?" He turned to her. "We found Martha," he said.
Ooh, it makes me want to listen more, definitely. All right, so this is an interesting question that is really relatable to mysteries, right? So sometimes you have to voice the villain before the listener should know who the villain is. And how do you balance that characterization without revealing too much?
So I think in general, this is a really interesting question, and the best writers play on your bias. So we all have a bias. We know what the good guy is supposed to sound like. We know what the bad guy is supposed to sound like. And a good writer will have you thoroughly convinced the wrong way, so that when it's revealed, you're confronted with your own bias. And you go, "How did I fail?" "Oh, because of my bias, because I am predisposed to believe somebody who sounds like that is good and someone who sounds like that is bad." In this particular book, there were 5 possible villains, all of different class, status, dialect. And there was dialogue before any of the 5 were either crossed off the list or revealed to be the villain. And I was like, I've got 5 completely different voices, but I've got to come up with a voice for that scene that doesn't betray or identify any of those 5. And luckily, it was a scene that's kind of creepy and dark. And so it was just a very low murmured voice that was kind of... If it could have visualized it, it would have had a lot of static blur.
Well, this is clearly the perfect week to have this webinar as we lead up to all the creepy things that are supposed to happen at Halloween. Janae, it looked like you had something to add there.
I was going to say that usually it helps when you're playing a character, a bad character, an evil character, if you don't judge them. So typically when you're thinking about the villain, you try and put yourself in their shoes, and because most villains don't think they're villainous, they don't think they're evil. They have justified what they're doing, and so for them it feels perfectly justified to do what they're doing. And if you go into it with that frame of mind, like, no, this is completely reasonable, everything this person is doing makes total sense. And sometimes I find that helpful to keep you from tipping off or signaling too hard that this is the villain, this is the ultimate baddie. Yeah.
That is a great point, and will make me rethink my, next time I want to approach something villainously, how.
Think about it as like it's a peaceful, wonderful venture. Nothing to see here. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's.
So JD, a question for you. What are some techniques you use to make listeners feel scared in the suspenseful part of the book?
I think pace is the most important element to incorporate, because you want to slow it down and allow the author's words to do what they did to you when you were reading them. So you don't want to get ahead of it. You want them to experience every sentence, every beat, and just take your time and let them visualize, because that's the key, slowing it down and allowing the listener to see this imagery that you're trying to paint in their mind. And if you do it correctly, well, actually, if the author has done it correctly and you, and you've given life to it, then it will do the job. So yeah, pace, I think, is most important.
That's a great point. So Imogen, another nuts and bolts question, because they keep coming in here. So do you get assistance in advance with the proper pronunciations of names, places, cities and towns, those sorts of things?
Oh my God, have to. I just finished narrating. So I narrated all of Sharon Osbourne's autobiographies, and they are
not a mystery, right?
Chocker, not a mystery, although I have a comment on mysteries in a minute. They are chocker with real life people, like all these old musos, and I don't have a clue who they are, where they're from. So I'm sitting there going, who's Jeff Lynne? Obviously I know what Ozzy sounds like, but who were the rest of the guys from Sabbath? And they all Brummies? Are they, how do you pronounce them? There's so much prep that goes into those, especially when you're dealing with real people, because if you mess that up, that's just shocking. That's just amateur schoolboy. I can't be doing that. But I also had a comment on the on JD's comment on pace, which was so perfect. I was doing a podcast called Unlikable Female Characters, which is run by 3 female thriller authors, and it's brilliant. Wendy Hurd, who wrote The Kill Club, absolutely amazing thriller book. She said to me, she's a big fan of audiobooks. She said, the thing I've noticed is that when I read a scary book, I scan ahead, and I can't do that with an audiobook. So we get to really torture them. There's no skipping ahead. Oh God, who did it? Is she going to die? And what JD said is perfect. We just make them wait. I mean, not that I'm into the power or anything, but.
So basically you're all telling us that you're trying to torture us in some way.
Yeah, we're sadists. We're
Good
audio sadists.
So Imogen, you mentioned that you're an author. So I have a follow-up question for you.
Yeah.
An author wants to know, are there things that writers can do to make the narrating flow easier for you as the reader?
Yeah, just write it really well. But also maybe try and avoid some of there are some really obfuscating descriptions of people's accents. I had one I will never forget, where it was this aged guy who was, I quote, his accent was a combination of an expensive Oxbridge education, but with hints of his rough working class Glasgow background. Now you do that for me. Someone do that for me. Maybe just consider when you're writing how hard it is to come up with these incredibly difficult descriptions of people's accents. But no, in general, just write it really well. If you write it well, it's not like work. I mean, I can't believe people pay me when it's good writing. It just flows. So yeah, write better.
Well, I'm going to ask our traveler here, Janie, do you ever hear a distinct, quirky voice in the wild of your daily life that you remember and try to add to your narration voice bag?
Oh, absolutely. All the time. All the time. Sometimes, yeah, all the time. Sometimes it'll be drive-throughs. You'll go through the drive-through and you'll get a voice, because that's a situation where you hear them first. You don't see them. And that for me is truly just like, so yeah, I love it. All the time. And specifically accents. I love going to different countries and getting to hear the different dialects. Even in, I went to Scotland and heard a woman really with a thick accent, and I had never heard it before. I thought, wow, that's really very. I was about to do it, and then I realized I'm not prepared for that today. But yeah, love hearing, love listening, and really getting a full picture of like how vast and varied accents can be. Even I'm in the South currently, and there are a million different variations on Southern accents depending on what part of town you're in or what the time period is. Or so yeah, I pick up on accents all over the place. Yeah.
Thank you. And Kate, this is a fun question. I'm going to ask you, how do you deal with getting tongue-tied in the middle of the workday? You're still on mute.
So I find the brain is the first to go. And so if I'm tongue-tied, it's usually because I need to step away. I need to take a break. I need to clear my head, because I find the most challenging thing for your stamina is the mental focus, because you got to be firing on all cylinders up here in order for all of the other instrument to work. So
the things that we have to keep in mind when we want to become an audiobook narrator, right? Make sure your brain is firing and you're wearing soft clothing.
Yep.
So we'll start with JD. How did you get led into the audiobook career? What was your start?
I was in New York City, and I had a commercial agent who handled voiceover work, and they sent me to Claudia Howard at Recorded Books, and I auditioned for my first audiobook with her, and the rest was history. That was it. It was pretty cut and dry. That's right. I mean, she brought me in, taught me, all the techniques, and let me go, and that was it.
Excellent. Same question for our newest narrator to the group here.
Here we go. I originally was doing A Christmas Carol at the Alliance Theater, and with a big group of talented actors, and some of them had been working on audiobooks, and I overheard a conversation, nosy as I am, and I asked how I could get into that, and they told me, hey, we do audiobooks at a place called Listen Up in Atlanta, and go and audition. And so I did, and I was told I had a very unique voice that would work for them. So I've been doing that ever since, and I kind of started small. I worked on children's books and then worked my way up to, like, erotica and mystery and thrillers and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, I love accents. So that's main, and children's books and stuff, since that allows me to, and sci-fi allow me to create all kinds of different really cool characters. So that's how I got into it.
So you don't have to tell us your pseudonym, everyone, but how many of you have recorded erotica? I'm curious.
Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah.
Oh, look at JD. Sheepishly.
This is my origin story.
Oh, you got your start in erotica. Tell us more.
So I started, and a couple of people were saying, how do I get started? I started by recording books. That's a good job. Recording books for the blind. And I went into the RNIB, the Royal National Institute for Blind People, and said, I'd love to do audiobooks. I grew up listening to them. And they auditioned me and they were like, okay, but there's lots of middle-class white girls hanging around. And then I just dropped into the conversation that I used to be a burlesque dancer, and they went, cha-ching, did you read erotica? And I went, yeah, sure, as long as it's not, hideous or racist or sexist or anything like that. Yeah, I'm totally down with it. Anyway, it turns out I'm really good at reading nips. So I just got book after book after book. Anyone who wanted erotica, it was like, Imogen's your girl. And this was around about the time of 50 Shades of Questionable Grey. All the mainstream publishers tried to rush publish audio porn, as I call it. And they were like, who are we going to get to read this? No one will read this stuff. So they phoned up the RNIB and went, who do you get to read your erotica? And they went, oh my God, Imogen. So I am the only actor I know who reads erotica under her own name, baby.
Oh, I know. I
So
know
don't
there are
have a
others.
pseudonym. Are there? Oh, good.
There are indeed.
Nice. So yeah. Anyway,
You're-
sorry, that was my origin story for you all.
Well, wait, when you're as good as Imogen, you want to take credit for that work, yes? So you put your name on it. I understand.
That is an excellent point.
Anyway, someone else go erotica.
All right, now, so this is a bit of a tougher question. As we're finding the world of publishing is changing a bit, I'm going to ask JD and Janie to talk a little bit about, is the industry doing any more to include more audio narrators of color? Are you seeing different books come to you, and are you, what's happening in that realm? We'll start with JD.
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing that, at least for me, is that I always have to acknowledge that I love doing books from the African American perspective. So sometimes there's a debate, oh, I want to do more, and I went through this in college actually, because there was this necessity to do Shakespeare, and I love Shakespeare, and I felt like I was pretty good at it, but I was like, I kind of want to do August, I don't find that I'm a better actor because I do Shakespeare versus doing August Wilson. So August Wilson actually wrote a book, The Ground on Which I Stand, I believe it was called. And he was saying, start from where you are and expand. So I've never, I've always embraced, telling stories from the African American experience. And I also enjoy, telling stories from other perspectives as well. I think what has happened is the publishers are now giving more attention and shining more light on those authors, which in turn gives us more work, and then, there's still the slow process of people allowing you to, or I guess the slow process of people changing their thinking and going away from traditional casting. Like I just did the new translation of Beowulf, and it was one of the funnest times I had in the booth, man. And Headley is amazing. So I was just, honored to do that work. But at the same time, Richard Wright, I'm like, hey, I'm just, the classics, though classics are classics. And so I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, I think there is, I think there's progress because the world is changing and people are becoming more cognizant of what perspective, why are we only highlighting things from one perspective? And as they ask that question, then they say, well, it doesn't make any sense. So we have to highlight all perspectives. And as they do that, everybody has a seat at the table. And then it becomes less of a thing as far as traditional casting is concerned. So.
Excellent. And I will say what's nice about what all of you do is that you get to play all the characters from many different perspectives. So
that was actually, no, that was actually what I was gonna say, is that for a long time I didn't get hired to do Black literature because for some reason I didn't sound ethnic enough. in a very strange sort of way. It was weird. It was like, and then it was hard for me to also get books where I did accents because I don't look the part, and they wanted someone to be authentic. So you get a lot of different, like, I do British accent. It's not great, but I listen to Imogen, and I'm sort of like, and then I've got, Takeda and stuff. So we talk like this. There are a lot of different accents that I can do, but because if my headshot went before me, I wouldn't get considered for certain roles because of the way I looked. And now doing audiobooks, like JD said, that's one of the things that's beautiful, is that you get a chance, if you're hired for a specific type of work, you get a chance to create a lot of different characters within the book. And so then people don't feel quite so hesitant about. For this particular book, I had to redo a couple of the characters because they were worried that they would lean too far into caricature. They would sound too, caricature-y. But for me, my ear heard them this way. I just realized that I had to kind of tone them down for other people who may not be native to Queens or native to Decatur or native to, wherever. So sometimes there's a way to find a middle ground of like not going so far into the accent, but like sort of a general malaise, an idea, like somewhere get close to it, and then you can kind of give them what they need. But I say that all to say it is changing, and I think people are being more considerate now of like the fact that there are myriad of different experiences within all of us, and if given the chance, we have interesting and valid stories to tell, and I think that's becoming more and more relevant. I think we're starting to get more opportunities to show our depth and breadth and width, and
Yes, JD.
Just wanted to add just one other thing. Just it will also change at a much faster pace if there are, publishers from different backgrounds.
Yes.
So I think it starts there, and then everything else will be a trickle down effect there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. And, we are starting to see conversations and change happen. So we're at an exciting time in audiobooks. All right. Well, we veered a little bit away from mysteries, but I'd like to say thank you to all of our guests. And Imogen and Kate, I would like a number between 1 and 100 from each of you. We have 2 giveaways. I will email the winners based on these random numbers. Imogen.
3.
3. All right. And Kate.
3.
Hold up your fingers or unmute, Kate.
77.
77. Okay. All right. 3 and 77. You will receive emails from me letting you know that you are the winner of a free audiobook title. I would like to thank all of these wonderful narrators for your fantastic insights. I certainly learned a lot. Thank you to the staff of AudioFile who made all of this possible with all of their hard work. And thank you to all of those listeners out there who read our reviews, listen to your audiobooks, and are participating with us today. Look for the recording of this to come up by early next week, hopefully even sooner, on AudioFile's YouTube channel. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and let's all wave bye-bye.